which teams from the recent college football playoff are going to return to the college football playoff for back-to-back seasons, in some cases multiple seasons back-to-back, or what teams are going to potentially be on the outside looking in. This is more of an experiment to see who should you be buying into, who are some of the teams that I might be looking at and saying, was this a one-year wonder? I think there is going to be a set list of about 6 teams. I think 6 teams out of the total 12 that made the college football playoff in 2025 are going to return to the college football playoff in 2026. And that's half the field. It's a difficult path to get there, but I think these teams could lose 2 games in the regular season, and more times than not, you're going to find themselves playing in the postseason for multiple rounds. The first one's Indiana, the defending national champions. Indiana is going to make it to the college football playoff again. This is not a team that is just going to disappear off the face of the earth. This is a team that has done very well in the transfer portal. They have arguably the best coach in all of college football. They just won a national championship. I get it. You could still be fooled by that logo. Maybe they have to go on a 5-year run where they win multiple national championships for you to believe. At the end of the day, you are going to be on the wrong side of history. Indiana is a legit threat to once again make the college football playoff. Josh Hoover is an absolute gamer from TCU, their new quarterback. Nick Marsh, one of the best wide receivers in all of college football. They're going to be just fine. They're going to have one of the best offensive lines on top of that as well. This shouldn't be a hot take to say Indiana is going to make it back to the college football playoff. Miami in the same case. Met Indiana in the national championship. Miami has their quarterback, Darian Mensah. We've talked about him a lot on this page. Darian Mensah, an absolute dog. Darian Mensah is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country. If I had to pick a Heisman vote, or if I had to pick a potential Heisman right now, I'm leaning towards Darian Mensah. I think he's going to fit so well within the confines of a Shannon Dawson offense. But what makes the team, it's not just about the quarterback, but what makes the team so enticing when we look at the college football playoff, because at the end of the day, they didn't have a perfect regular season. That was a team that was on potentially the outside looking in. The whole debate about the college football playoff, although a lot of people have been talking about, oh, well, they made the national championship and it's almost like a Men in Black situation. You get hit with the pen and you completely forgot that Notre Dame and Miami was the whole discussion going into the first round. So that team was completely flawed, although the defense caught fire. The offense had gotten some sort of rushing attack and rhythm. There's so much meat left on the bone for Mario Cristobal and the Miami Hurricanes. They got an upgrade at quarterback. They have their returning star running back in Mark Fletcher. They have a great wide receiver duo. If you do not know about Cooper Bartake from Duke, he's one of the best wide receivers in the entire country, paired with Malachi Toney, who was a true freshman last year. And then the defense has a ton of veteran pieces returning. There's so much to like about Miami. They will make another college football playoff next season. I'd be shocked if they didn't. Ohio State, same case when we talk about these highly talented teams. They're just a factory at this point. They would have to easily lose 3 games, and I don't see that happening in their schedule, knowing what talent they have on this roster. Julian Saints is going to be one of the top quarterbacks. Do I think he's slightly overrated? Yeah, but it doesn't matter when you're throwing to Jeremiah Smith and the litany of wide receivers that they have. I get it. You lose Brian Hartline, and maybe they take a step back with the wide receiver talent, but it was such an anomaly to all of college football to have that hub and factory of wide receiver talent. It doesn't mean the rest of the roster gets a step back in terms of talent. The defense is going to be needed to be rebuilt. They do have an offensive and defensive coordinator change once again, but I'm just trusting Ohio State to once again be a team that's going to be in the national championship picture. They're going to have enough talent to win a ton of games. They're going to make another college football playoff run. It would shock me otherwise. Oregon, with Dante Moore coming back, this makes them a lock, in my opinion, to get back to the dance. Dante Moore, a lot of people are talking about whether it was the good or bad decision going and returning for his final year and not going to the NFL draft. Do I think it's risky? Absolutely. But I think a lot of people see that risk and automatically assume it's not going to work for the best version of himself. And I think it will. I think he has done things that are a little bit off the beaten path for a lot of quarterbacks. and it may work out in his favor. It worked out in his favor going from UCLA to Oregon and waiting that full year. I think this another year with development and starts is going to do wonders for a quarterback of his play style and his talent. And Oregon is going to surround him with a great situation, one of the best wide receiver groups in the entire country. Yeah, they're going to have to change the offensive and defensive coordinator, but I trust Dan Lanning. This is a coach that is so young that I think a lot of people forget how young he is. I've even talked about it on this page about him being a James Franklin-esque coach, but the difference with him and James Franklin is more rooted in the fact that James Franklin was in the coaching sphere for a very long time and really was just banging his head against the wall and not really getting any extra results based on the expectations. Dan Lanning still has a ton of runway before we really start to put the pressure of potentially having to look elsewhere. I think he's going to be just fine. I think he's going to have them back in the college football playoff. And as long as he's circling the national championship picture, frankly, that's all you could be asking for out of a head coach in 2026 for college football, knowing all the external factors that could cause problems within an organization at this point. Georgia's a team that I expect to be back in, especially Gunnar Stockton returning. There's so much to like. You have, in my opinion, the best coach in all of college football in Kirby Smart. I just have this expectation that they're going to be there in what is seen as back-to-back quote-unquote down years. Now, to be fair, the SEC has been seen as a down conference compared to what we've seen with the Big Ten. They still win the conference. They still find themselves in the college football playoff, even though they may not have what we became accustomed to with the 2021 and 2022 Georgia teams. They're still going to play at a very high level. They're not going to make mistakes. They have a returning quarterback. I still stamp them as one of the biggest wild cards entering 2026. Not a lot of people know what you're going to get with Georgia, but what I truly believe that is not being discussed enough is what you do get with Georgia is really good coaching, high-level talent, and that's all you really need to be a competitive team, especially within the SEC. So it shouldn't be a hot take to say Georgia is going to make another college football playoff run after the season. And Texas Tech's in a unique situation. Texas Tech, I think, is easily going to make it back to the dance. They're in the Big 12 conference that is going to have to adjust to them and their spending and their talent acquisition. And it's going to take a couple years. I think it will happen where we finally get maybe an Oklahoma State, hell, a TCU. Someone within that conference is not just going to wait around and watch Texas Tech spend all this money with Cody Campbell and no one's going to even put a fight up. It's going to happen sooner or later. It's just not going to happen next season, in my opinion. A lot of people are already slotting them as an automatic Big 12 champion. It's hard to disagree with that, especially knowing the nature of what the talent is on that roster, both young and veteran experience. Brendan Sorsby, their new quarterback from Cincinnati, is very talented. We'll talk about him in a minute in terms of the NFL draft. There's so much to like with Texas Tech, and their path to getting back to the dance is arguably the easiest out of any team that is going to be in the 2025 playoff trying to make a back-to-back trip to the college football playoff because they're in the Big 12, because they have such a talent and size advantage against all the other Big 12 teams. It's hard for me to see a world where they don't make it, knowing the investment and the coaching that is on this staff. That's about 6 teams, right? Like I said, 6 teams that are going to make it back to the dance. Who are the maybes? Now, I didn't mention the group of 5 teams for the fact that there was 2 of them, and there's only going to be one moving forward because they changed the rules. If you did not hear, it is the 4 conference champions, and then the 5th team that is going to be the other conference champion, the 5th one, the group of 5 champion. There's about 4 teams I think are in a maybe tier. I'm talking, I could see the path for any 4 of these teams or multiple of them to make it to the college football playoff, but I have some severe red flags. Red flags enough to where I don't feel confident that I would say, yeah, they're going to make it back to the dance. Truthfully, Texas A&M, you see the Revley hat on me. You see the pennant behind me. I can't be biased in this spot. Texas A&M has a lot to replace from that 11-1 team that made the college football playoff, hosted a college football playoff game against Miami. There's a lot of churn going on. Offensive line, a lot of players left that building. I believe it was about 3 players that are going to go to the NFL draft, potentially 4. You have a tight end room that got completely flipped on its head due to the transfer portal, a running back room that, yes, Le'Veon Moss, he's their star player in that running back room. He was highly productive. He is their number 1 running back. On the surface, you lost your number 1 guy, but he had been injured in and out of the lineup for the past 2 seasons. It still hurts because he was a different style of running back. Your number 1 wide receiver. Flip the page to the defense. Your most productive pass rusher in Cassius Howell, the defensive player of the year in the SEC, he's gone. Your top 2 defensive tackles, they're gone. Your top 2 linebackers, Torian York and Scooby Williams, they're out of there. Your number 1 cornerback, Will Lee, out of there. That's a lot. Then you put on top of that your offensive and defensive coordinator leaving the building. There is a lot to replace. Even the Kirby and Nick Sabans and the Kurt Signettis of the world, that's a lot to replace for any team. The positives, though, you did great in the transfer portal. You've done great in recruiting. The talent acquisition should make up for some of the production. You have a coach that is proven to be able to get the most out of very talented players, and you have a returning quarterback back. So there's plenty to like about Texas A&M, but with the amount of churn going on with that roster, I can't confidently say that they're automatically going to be back. You also throw in a more difficult schedule. That was a big point of discussion with Texas A&M last year. It's tough for me to see a path for them to automatically get back. Oklahoma, the volatility needs to be more focused. It can't have the highs and lows like we saw. And it's hard for me to see that changing when John Mateer is their quarterback. Now, I'm a John Mateer guy. I've been a John Mateer guy, even dating to last offseason. But the volatility of his play and the identity that this Oklahoma offense has adopted has been reflective of what their quarterback is, which is a roller coaster ride. You have some really good moments, and then you have some really bad moments. We saw it in the playoff game. We saw it the entire season. What can Oklahoma do? Because the defense is not the problem. The defense will not be the problem while Brent Venables is the defensive coordinator and calling those plays. What can they do on the offensive side of the ball with John Mateer at the quarterback position, hopefully healthy for the entire offseason? That's my biggest concern. Alabama, very similar. Both of those teams facing off in the college football playoff was so poetic to me because they were so flawed. Alabama is a very talented program. They're going to be a very young program. They're going to be a team that I struggle to see with how much young talent is there. Can they fix the main problem, which was the volatility, the inconsistency? That's the only thing consistent about the Kalen DeBoer Alabama teams is their inconsistency. They could be 20.5-point favorites, and all of a sudden this underdog team is in a dogfight with them in the fourth quarter. But then they can travel to Athens and face off against Georgia and Kirby Smart and find a way to win. The up and down nature of this Alabama team has to be more focused if they want to be more consistent. I just can't confidently say with the volatility, very similar to Oklahoma, that they're automatically going to make it back to the college football playoff. They can. I'm just not going to say that they're a lock to do it. Ole Miss is the one that I'm most confident will not make the college football playoff in 2026. The Trinidad Chambliss situation aside, there's still plenty to be figured out on that front. Even with Deuce Knight, who I think is a very talented kid, it's hard for me to see the drop off of an elite head coach or an elite offensive staff to what it's going to be is going to put Deuce Knight, a very raw prospect, in the best position to succeed. I think Pete Golding did a good job with the defense, but from this point forward, and I've said it time and time again, my biggest worry with Ole Miss is that we get 3 years down the road, and what we saw in the college football playoff was the peak of the Pete Golding era. That the shine and the allure of what that team was in the college football playoff starts to wear off with each loss. That probably will happen in 2026. I get it. There's a lot to like. Kawan Lacey's back. There's some pieces on this team. I just don't know if they can get back to the mountaintop like they did in 2026 or in 2025, truthfully. There's too many red flags with this team. You really now get to see what is Pete Golding as a head coach, because the guy that was really carrying the weight is now out. He's fully off the table. You're going to have to replace so many pieces on that defense. I just can't get on board with Ole Miss automatically being assumed to be a top 15 team in the country. I don't even have them in the top 25. But nonetheless, those are the teams I think will return to the college football playoff. We got a lot of maybes. I would say if you wanted me to be really definitive, teams I don't think will make it back. I don't think Oklahoma will do it. I don't think Ole Miss will do it. I don't think Texas A&M will do it. Alabama is so difficult to project what they will be in 2026 that I can't definitively say they're not going to make it. I think the schedule is going to be a problem for Texas A&M. I think Oklahoma's offensive identity is going to fluctuate too much. Plus, their schedule is a little bit more difficult. Not more difficult than what we saw last year, but I think it is difficult in terms of what we see in the vacuum of 2026. And then we've already talked about Ole Miss. But let me know, what teams do you believe from the past college football playoff are going to make it next season?